So the planets today are called the transiting planets. The planets in your birth chart we refer to as the natal planets. So in effect you have two of every planet, where it was at the time you're born, say Jupiter, and where it is today. And we're watching both of those in action.
Can I interrupt with a thought that pops up for me? If we don't view time as linear, is there an understanding that each day is a birthday? Do you look at it that way?
You certainly could. There is a certain linearity built into astrological, to the Western astrological tradition. I don't think it's inherent, but I think we've been looking at it that way for so long, it looks like it's inherent, so to speak. In other words, we do follow these transits in linear sequences, although they're all operating in different cyclical rhythms, etc. So linear is not quite the right word, but there is a forward movement in astrology.
Okay.
Although, you know, for instance, a lot of American indigenous peoples, the Hopi, for example, they had an astrology, but they didn't have a notion of time. So it's entirely formulated in astrology without our sense of Western time. Western astrology is so steeped in that for so long that it would be hard to separate it.
And I know, it's interesting, I never was one to embrace astrology, but I always would look up at the moon, I would look at the sun. I knew something was going on, but I just, I couldn't embrace the everyday readings and then the seeding that brings forth. If you watch that, you know, don't go out today because of the dangers, then you're constantly living by what they're telling you, and I think that's misleading.
I totally agree with that. I don't think that's astrology's value. That's another kind of overlaying. The astrologer's overlaying a certain judgment on things. If we just describe the movement of energies and let people decide what they want to do or not do with those energies, that's our job. Our job isn't to tell people what to do or not to do, although that's what most astrologers think they're supposed to do, because that's what people want. You know? They want to be told what to do.
Right, because we don't want to think for ourselves. So you must be watching the sky a lot.
Well, I've been connected to it for a long time, you know, and you know, astrology comes from old cultures that thought very differently than we think. And they were very close to nature, and it was their way of articulating the way the rhythms of nature work in human life. I think Western astrology's gotten away from its natural language and gotten, you know, caught up in philosophical language and scientific language, and I think it's valuable to go back to that connection to nature.
Do you think now more than ever?
Yes.
With changes.
So, you know, for instance, we talk about the planet I talk about the planet Saturn as it moves through your chart as symbolizing winter cycles in your life. Jupiter symbolizes summer cycles. So I use a lot of natural metaphors. And when I did the podcast, I tried to talk about this thing we're in as a storm passing through, without, again, making too many judgments on what I thought that would actually turn out to be. I just think that's a better way to work with it. Otherwise, again, we're getting involved in language, we're getting involved in logics and things that we just don't have to get trapped in.
And you could probably take a lot of good guesses based on what you know. You could probably almost have a pretty good idea what to expect coming up. But then if you told me or shared too much detail, now aren't you creating a reality that maybe is built just on your ideas?
Exactly.
So I'm sure you really hold back as much as you can not to share
Well,
too much.
I hold back unless I just feel I am compelled for some reason. I hold back again from, my job is to describe the flow of energy without locking it into too many specific predictions.
Because it's different, isn't it unique for every single person on the planet?
And that's where astrology's radical viewpoint is that it's completely person-centered. In other words, you are at the center of your own experiential universe. Every 6 billion of us, every one of the 6 billion of us on the planet, looks out at the world slightly differently. And the chart is a map of all of those differences. Where again the astrologers go wrong is when they start making generalized statements. Because that's scientific thinking. Astrology is radically individual. In other words, the way a certain planet works in my life and in my chart can be quite different from the way it works in yours. And if we assume that it's working for you the way it's working for me, we're not doing astrology anymore, we're doing science at that point.
And aren't, you know, we understand energy is everything. We are energy ourselves. So it does make a lot of sense to me that whatever energy this was when I came here is affecting how I view the world and how I react and live in this suit that I came into. So it does seem, it makes the most sense. And I feel I'm so glad we came today, because I feel this is the best way of if you're going to get any kind of guidance or direction, that this is the best way to help me make some decisions.
Okay.